Good evening, everyone. We welcome you to Ortho TV original webinar series. Today, we have a young and dynamic arthroscopy surgeon, Dr. Nagaraj Shetty, who's going to speak on tips and tricks to achieve cost-effective meniscus repair, a boon for the young arthroscopist. He is my very good friend, and he's done his fellowship in arthroscopy and sports orthopedics from South Korea and fellowship in shoulder and elbow surgery from Italy. He is attached to Hinduja Lilavati Hospital in Mumbai and also Nanavati Hospital. He is also head of unit in one of the municipal hospitals in the Mumbai suburbs. So over to Dr. And we also have on the panel Dr. Prasad Chaudhary, who is a professor in D.Y. Patil Medical College, and Dr. Ajinkya Desale, who is a young and upcoming arthroscopy surgeon from Nasik. This webinar has been brought to us by an unrestricted grant from GSK, the makers of Iodex Ultra Gel. So over to Dr. Nagaraj Shetty.
So thank you, Dr. Neeraj Vijlani, for this opportunity, Ortho TV, and Dr. Ashok Sham for this opportunity. And when Dr. Neeraj asked me what I would like to speak on, I think meniscus repair is the most apt topic, especially if I can share my tips and tricks over the last at least 12 years of my experience in arthroscopy. The tips and tricks to make it not only biomechanically and surgically very strong repair, but also cost effective, because that's what runs in your mind when you're a young arthroscopist. So that's the core of this talk. Like Dr. Bijlani said, I am a practicing arthroscopy shoulder and knee surgeon at Lilavati, Hinduja and Nanavati hospitals. I'm also the head of unit at BDBA Municipal General Hospitals in Mumbai. With this introduction, all of us are aware of the basic anatomy of the meniscus. What's relevant to understand is that the menisci are fibrocartilaginous structures. The medial meniscus is slightly larger compared to the lateral meniscus, which is more C-shaped. Both of them have got strong attachments in the anterior and the posterior portions, the so-called roots of the meniscus. Anteriorly, they merge with the intermeniscal ligament with a varying anatomy. Posteriorly, the root of the medial meniscus merges through the shiny white fibers into the posterior medial tibia, which we can see here. And it merges with the PCL, the posterior medial meniscus root. The lateral meniscus root is attached, having a strong attachment through the meniscofemoral ligaments, the anterior and the posterior meniscofemoral ligaments, the so-called ligaments of Humphrey and Risberg, which not only provide stability but also make it more mobile. Therefore, the chances of meniscal injury on the lateral side are relatively less compared to the medial side, where the meniscus can get locked between the femur and the tibia. With this brief understanding of the microvascular anatomy, it's very important to understand this because today we are discussing about meniscus repair. On the top left-hand side, you can see the intricate plexus that comes to the knee, especially the meniscus, through the geniculate artery plexus, which you can see very well, the superior and the inferior geniculate artery plexus. But at the microscopic level, it is Steve Arnoxy who in the late 80s pointed out this perimeniscal capillary plexus, and he showed that the perimeniscal capillary plexus starts from the capsular area and comes in a leash of vessels towards the mid portion of the meniscus. So it starts from the periphery, but comes as a leash of vessel through the mid portion of the meniscus. With this understanding, we can divide the meniscus into the three zones. The peripheral capsular zone, which has got the maximum vascularity, is called as the red zone. So the 1/3 of the meniscus is extremely vascular. The middle 1/3 is called as the red-white zone, because that's where the vasculature starts and just almost reaches up to the mid zone. And the inner zone is what is called as a white zone, because it has got no vasculature per se. So with this understanding, we can divide them into these three zones. And as the anatomy suggests, the peripheral zone, the red zone, is the most amenable to repair. The red-white zone with appropriate biological preparation is amenable to repair. The white zone is not amenable to repair. So that's the conclusion of these two anatomical slides. All of us are also aware of the classic tear patterns. On the left-hand side top, we see the longitudinal tear, which is the tear which occurs along the collagen fibers. In the middle, we see the radial tear, which is like cutting through the collagen fibers, and therefore these are biomechanically devastating injuries. We will see a presentation on repairing these as we go ahead. On the right-hand side on top, you see the horizontal cleavage tear. And on the left hand side lower portion, you see the parrot beak type of tear or the flap tear. And on the right hand side lower corner, you see the bucket handle tear, which is the one which we are going to show first, because that's the one that is most commonly encountered with a locked knee and probably one of the tougher things for the young arthroscopy surgeon. So once again, summarizing the tear patterns, you've got a longitudinal tear, you've got a radial tear, you've got a horizontal cleavage tear, you've got a flap tear, and you've got a bucket handle meniscus tear. These are the main tear patterns which you will encounter in your clinical practice. Let's talk about the first case scenario. A young male, 28-year-old person who had a episode of instability, as in he was playing, he had a twisting injury while playing, and he presented to us with a locked knee. This injury, twisting injury, was a month back. On examination, there was a classic Lachman positive. His pivot shift was grade 1, and he had medial joint line tenderness. So when we see a patient with a twisting injury and ACL findings of Lachman and pivot shift with the locking episodes and medial joint line tenderness, we know what to expect on the MRI. We expect that most likely is going to have some sort of a flap, either a bucket handle tear like we see here. So there is a displaced bucket handle fragment in the notch. You see the double PCL sign on the sagittal image. So on the coronal image on the left hand side, you see the fragment that has come into the notch. On the sagittal image, you see the double PCL sign, which is pathognomonic of a bucket handle meniscus tear. On the axial image, as a arthroscopist who's starting off your career, try looking at axial image more appropriately, because this will give you a lot of information compared to the sagittal and the coronal images. Here again, we see the displaced meniscal fragment into the notch. Now here in this axial image, along with the coronal images, you can actually see the zone of the meniscus. So like you see here, the entire meniscus tissue, except the peripheral rim, is bucketed, is displaced into the notch. So you have to be prepared for repairing this meniscus from front all the way to the back. So there are a couple of information this is giving us. Number one, the anterior extent of the bucket. You can see that the meniscus is extending all the way to the anterior level, and it is going all the way to the posterior near the root, and it is coming off from its capsular surface. So I need to be prepared for repairing all the way from front to back. And I need to be aware that this has to be repaired, because if a meniscectomy is done in this patient, a young patient with bucket from the capsule, the outcomes are going to be very, very poor in terms of early arthritis and in terms of failure of your surgery. So this is the classic tear pattern that you're going to see in a bucket handle meniscus. This is one of the examples where you can see a double bucket actually. You can see there is one flap and there's a second flap. And it's usually not so easy. Sometimes you will see that the meniscus is locked and not allowing you to visualize the medial compartment. So as and how we will go through this presentation, you will see me showing the tips and tricks for a pie crusting, which I always do before I start any evaluation or repairing of the meniscus. Unlike what is classically described, I do not do the pie crusting at the level of the joint or at the femoral attachment of the superficial MCL. I do it about a finger breadth below the joint line. Try to visualize the video on the left hand side. I've taken an 18 gauge small needle, not the large needle, but a small wide bore needle that comes with your TUR set. Do not dispose it off. Keep one with you and use that like a tenotomy knife. You will see this now. So I palpate the joint line, just come a finger breadth below the joint line. So that's the needle, and you make multiple fenestrations into the posterior fibers, giving slight valgus. Now observe the arthroscopy image. You will see the sudden give way, and that has to be a smooth give way. You do not want a large give way, and that is possible if you give a very gentle valgus force and just use this needle like a tenotomy blade. So just once again summarizing it, you start from the just distal to the joint line, use the blade like a tenotomy blade and go posteriorly, giving slight valgus. So at one point, when you're giving slight valgus, you will know you have targeted those posterior fibers of the superficial MCL, and you know you need to just stop there because now you've got that wide space. So these are my tricks to do a nice pie crusting, which is critical for you to do your repairs. So once you've done the pie crusting, this sort of a locked meniscus can be easily reduced. Not only that, you can visualize all the way to the capsular side, which is usually difficult if you do not do this nice pike rusting. So now we know this is a red white zone tear. With good preparation, these are amenable to repair. So that's my first trick in terms of pike rusting. The next important trick and tip is to always try to do vertical mattress stitches. So this is just noodles which I've tried to show, like the longitudinally and irregularly arranged collagen fibers of the meniscus. The chopsticks are nothing but the meniscus repair devices. And in this image, I'm trying to go parallel to the collagen fibers with the chopsticks. When I try to do that in a parallel fashion, I will not be able to grip those collagen fibers, or in this case, the noodle is just representative of collagen fibers. However, if I come at a perpendicular angle to the collagen fibers, like you see in this video, I'll be able to grab them well. That's the same concept we replicate during the meniscus repair. We want to go perpendicular to the collagen fibers in order to be able to hold that repair in a strong manner. So that's the take home message. Number 2, wherever possible and whenever possible, do not go for horizontal stitches, but vertical stitches. Sometimes you might not be able to do so. Even oblique vertical stitches are okay in terms of biomechanical superiority. With this understanding, the next important thing is you've done the pike rusting, you're visualizing your tear well, you've reduced your bucket handle. Now you need to prepare it with a diamond rasp. What you're now seeing is the diamond rasp, which is coming into the operative field. It's an important instrument all of you should have, because without adequate preparation, your repairs are unlikely to heal. So that's the first thing you would do. Get your diamond rasp. Prepare both the surfaces of the meniscus. Now this is a video where I've done a quick preparation. Then you come with a small joint shaver blade. If it is a tight knee, you can use a small joint shaver blade. Use it in the reverse mode with suction off. So you have rasped it and then used a shaver. But over the years, what I've realized is you need to do something more in terms of the preparation, spend more times in terms of the preparation. And this is a video which shows the same. The diamond rasp comes in, rasp the synovium around the meniscus thoroughly, because that's going to get your healing elements. Rasp both the meniscus surface and the capsular surface, the superior surface and the inferior surface, and not just that, but and shaver, but also create trephination holes. So that's the microfracture awl which I'm using to create trephination holes. Remember the pericapsular meniscus plexus, blood plexus, and the idea of trephination is to stimulate those meniscal vessels to come into the healing area. The inside out needles, which you're going to see in the next videos, also can be used for this trephination. So summarizing the biological preparation, you need to have a diamond rasp. Rasp not just the meniscal surface, but also the capsular surface and also the synovium surrounding the meniscus. Do trephination with the fine microfracture awl or with the help of your meniscus repair needles. Having done this, you then proceed with your meniscus repair techniques. As you are aware, for doing a bucket handle meniscus repair, you need to be confident and comfortable with all 3 repair techniques. The cost-effective techniques are the outside in and the inside out repair. With experience, you will be able to do it very fast, and I'll share some tips and tricks. The outside in meniscus repair is ideal for this area between the anterior 1/3 and all the way to the mid body. So starting from the anterior all the way to the mid body, you can do the outside in technique. You do have dedicated equipment like this, what are called as the meniscus mender systems, which basically are spinal needles with a stainless steel loop coming from inside. But it is extremely expensive, and therefore all of us are finding it difficult to use this routinely. What you could simply do is use an 18 gauge needle, pass a number 1 ethylon inside it. It comes in the form of a loop now, and just tie a knot. So you get a simple ready-made loop available in your OR. Take another spinal needle and begin your outside in repair like you see in this video. So this is the anterior most portion of the bucket. The first needle comes from the capsular side. The needle with the loop comes from the meniscal side. Use your hook probe like a counterforce. Now this is the needle which has the ethylon loop. Enter inside, free the loop, pass the above needle inside this loop. Load this needle with a 0 number fiber wire. Use a mosquito clamp to retrieve this fiber wire into your medial portal. Withdraw your spinal needle above and then the looped spinal needle from below. And this will take your fiber wire in a vertical mattress fashion. So let's go through this video again. Come with your plain spinal needle from above. come with your looped spinal needle from below. So this has got the loop of Ethilon. Pass the above spinal needle inside this loop. Now the above spinal needle will be fed by your assistant with a number 0 fiber wire, which is retrieved into the medial portal. Once it is retrieved into the medial portal, withdraw the spinal needle having the fiber wire on from above, and then withdraw the looped spinal needle from below, which will now get you the vertical mattress stitch. So as you can see here, I have passed 2 stitches already. Now what's important to note is you need to pass stitches from the under surface also, not just the superior surface, but the under surface also. So you'll pass a stitch from the superior surface, immediately you'll pass a stitch from the under surface, again a stitch from the superior surface, another stitch from the under surface. The same principles you will follow on passing the stitches from the under surface. So this is the conclusion of the outside in repair. We'll take the questions which is going to come up at the end of the bucket handle presentation. Now let's understand how to do the inside out repair, which is ideal for the repair from the mid body all the way to the root. Actually, you can do as your confidence improves, but definitely from the mid body up to the posterior third junction. For the root area, you can use the inside out, all inside stitches initially. So that's the area which is suitable. The root area, you can use the all inside repair technique. So once again is the longitudinal tear not visible, but once you do the pie crusting, which is critical even if you want to go by the inside out technique, just trying to show how well you can see once you have a good pie crusting. You can see the capsular surface so well. You know that the stitches are going. And what's important to note is having done that, once again see this, the view is on the anterolateral portal, the hook probe on the medial portal. Once I've done the pie crusting, shift your scope now to the anteromedial portal, having done this. And the hook probe now comes from the anterolateral portal. Now the hook probe is pushed into the capsular side on the posteromedial area. So it go and you push your hook probe into that posteromedial capsular area. Ask your assistant to keep it pushed and drop your knee to 90-degree flexion. That hook probe is going to be your landmark, which you can palpate in the posteromedial area to create your safety incision. It's important to understand that if you want to do a thorough inside out repair from the mid body all the way to the root, you have to create your safety incision and not just pass your stitches blindly and then take the incision, because in that case, you will have to search the sutures. It becomes a nightmare to do the tying of the sutures. So that's the hook probe which has come from the contralateral side. It is pushing on to the posteromedial capsule, and then you take your incision on the posteromedial area like you see here. Keep 2/3 of the incision above the joint line, 1/3 of the incision below the joint line. This is the images from Dr. Laprade, and as you can see here, what are the layers of your dissection? You take a vertical incision, you will encounter the sartorius fascia, incise the sartorius fascia vertically, then you will develop the plane behind the superficial MCL. The posteromedial capsule is in front, the medial head of gastroc is behind, and the semimembranosus is inferior. I'll repeat, you take a vertical incision on the posteromedial corner. The hook probe tip is helping you because you can palpate it there. You incise the sartorius fascia first. You are behind the superficial MCL. You will then encounter the plane between the posteromedial capsule and the medial head of the gastroc. Develop this plane with blunt dissection. You will encounter the semimembranosus and the hamstring tendons, which have to be retracted down. The posteromedial capsule is in front and the medial of the gastroc is behind. Sartorius fascia, once again, that's the window that you are trying to create. Once you've created that window, like you see here very clearly, semimembranosus below, posterior capsule in front, medial gastroc behind, you will place a simple spoon, which is available in your kitchen. Keep multiple sizes of spoons based on the size of the knee. And that's now with this preparation, your hook probe is still there. So with the spoon there, you can actually now put your finger into the wound and you can palpate your hook probe. Then you ask your assistant to hold the spoon with the left hand and palpate the hook probe, because then he has to be ready to retrieve those needles. So with this understanding, we go back to the scopy. Now, what do you do when the bucket handle tear is on the lateral side? Quickly, I will show. This is just for academic purpose. So this is the planes. You will take a lateral longitudinal incision. You will encounter the IT band, you will split the IT band, you will develop the plane between the posterolateral capsule and the lateral gastroc. So that's the incision. You do the blunt dissection, you have split the IT band now. Then do the blunt dissection, try to identify the plane between the lateral gastrocnemius and the posterolateral capsule. Use a Cobb elevator or a periosteum, and here again you will come with the spoon. And the same inside out needle technique can be done on the lateral side as well. With this understanding, this is how a inside out repair kit appears. You don't need to have all these cannulae. You don't need to have any of this equipment. You can very well, you don't need the thimble, you don't need the cannula benders. You just require a single lumen cannula. Invest in the single lumen cannula because this is sufficient and in fact better for all meniscus repair scenarios because it turns 360 degrees. And therefore you can go on the above the meniscus and under the meniscus. And it is low profile, so you can negotiate the lateral and the medial tibial spines, which are going to be your enemies for doing this sort of a repair. I'll show you how we negotiate this. So once again, our bucket handle tear of the right knee, as you can see, the visualization now is from the medial portal. The hook probe which you had pushed is coming from the lateral portal. And now you come with your cannula. That's the repair you want to do. You want to place a stitch on the under surface, which is first passed on the meniscal side. The needle pierces, deflects through the spoon, and your assistant holds on to that needle. You then pass the cannula again, and the second needle comes and pierces the capsular side now. So first you pass through the meniscal side and then the capsular side. You can see on the video how there is a restoration of the meniscus flans. So you can see that you pass stitches one above and now one below. We can go through this video again. So one stitch has been passed on the superior surface. Now we are passing the inferior surface stitches. Turn the cannula in such a way that you pierce the meniscal surface. Drop the knee. Once your assistant has passed the needle, you need to drop the knee to 70-degree flexion. Only then it will deflect off the spoon. And then you pass through the capsule and the second needle, which is preloaded with the fiber wire or orthocord. And that's the restoration of the flans. Now it's important to immediately tie this suture. What I follow is I get the knee back into slight extension and I tie this suture off, because if you keep many sutures, it's going to be very difficult to identify the corresponding one and it's going to be a nightmare like how I used to do in the past. So this is the thing that I used to do in the past. Not tie the sutures and tie them at the end in extension, but you could always do that as you go. So pass a suture, get it into extension, tie the suture and pass the next one. This is a example of me tying the sutures. So I was forced to take a horizontal mattress here, but I've got adequate number of vertical mattress sutures. This is just a supplementary suture. And this is me tying the knot. You use a knot pusher to tie the knot because you're dealing with deep wounds here. You can't expect your finger to reach and tension it adequately. So that's my next trick. You can tie a sliding knot or multiple half hitches, and you can actually observe the tensioning on arthroscopy. Use about 6 to 7 half hitches, and you get a nice stable inside out repair. You can do as many as stitches as you like. A typical bucket handle tear, we put at least about 8 to 10 inside out stitches to get a nice repair. As you can see in the video here, we have repaired all the way up to the root. Finally, obviously all of us are aware about the all inside technique. This is just a summarization of the bucket handle case. So near the root, you need to be careful. You need to keep your fast fix device very short. That's the tip that I want to share with you. Do not keep it as long as 18 mm. 16 mm is the highest limit probably you should keep. So that's the limit setter. Use a rigid cannula. Always use a cannula. Once your fast fix device comes in, we all know that you need to click that. You could either do it with your thumb and index finger if you're comfortable, or you could use both your hands and give that snap, withdraw, and then you go for the second pass. So that's the arthroscopy picture of the same. Direct your needle away from the midline. it's important to understand that the knot comes onto your second bite. So that's your knot coming in, and that's the completion of the repair. So inside out stitches all the way, only near the root I have used all inside stitches. Another example of a bucket handle which has been outside in the front, inside out in the middle, and a complete repair. If you have done an ACL reconstruction along with this, you don't need to worry because there's adequate amount of biological healing and your preparation will do the job. But if it is an isolated bucket handle tear in the absence of an ACL, you need to do a thorough notchplasty just in front of the ACL and drill these sort of bone marrow vents with a microfracture awl, which will get the marrow elements through. So that's the repair. So this is the completion of the bucket handle. And I think we can take questions on bucket handle before we go for ramp lesion repair.
Yes. Sir, I have a question.
Say,
in patients who have both ACL and ACL tear and bucket handle tears, which one should we go ahead with first? As if we reconstruct ACL past the graft first, we get less space for the repair. And if we do repair first, then our repair is at strength when we flex the knee more than 100 degrees.
Excellent question. So the sequence that I follow: diagnostic arthroscopy, get a plan, want to retrieve your graft, prepare your graft, soak it in vancomycin, go ahead for the femoral tunnel preparation, because like you said, for that you need hyperflexion. Once you have created your femoral tunnel, pass your loop stitch through the femoral tunnel, then come to the meniscus side, do your pie crusting, do your meniscus repair like we just discussed. And after this, all your tibial tunnel extra preparation will all be between 90 degree to full extension. So you're not going to hyperflex beyond this. So that's the sequence I follow.
Sir, do you calculate exactly in millimeters how, like, the end point of your MCL pie crusting with the probe? Like, this much is enough for all my devices, or this should be the bare minimum opening?
So it depends on the extent of repair that you're doing. So for a repair like an inside out repair, you require adequate space, because the entire idea is not to scuff the cartilage. So if you talk in terms of space, a typical hook probe is about 3 to 4 millimeter tip. You need to have at least 2 hook probe of width to be able to manage easily. About 6 to 7 millimeter of opening is needed.
Yes. Sir,
Ajinkya, right? Dr. Prasad also asked one or two queries.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to know that when you do the pie crusting of the MCL, I mean, do we have to watch for instability in the post-operative period?
Yes, so this
the medial side instability.
Yes, this has been a very valid doubt by everybody. So the concept is that the MCL we are doing is we are not really damaging the entire MCL complex. As we know, the MCL complex comprises of the superficial MCL, which has got anterior, middle, posterior fibers. We've got the deep MCL, we've got the posterior oblique ligament fibers. So there's a lot of structures on the medial side to support it and prevent it from instability. What we are targeting is the most posterior fibers of the superficial MCL only. And that too, we are creating microfenestrations. And within the period of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, where the healing period, the patient is going through the healing period, it invariably heals. So you absolutely don't have to worry in terms of instability post-op. It never happens. It never ever happens.
So do we have to brace them, or we don't have to brace them at all?
So always you will be bracing these menisci after the repair. So pie crusting is reserved for cases where you are going to be allowing protected weight bearing. So you need to be careful in the cases where you are, let us say you're doing a meniscectomy in a tight knee and you want to make the patient weight bearing the next day. You need to be very careful in terms of your pie crusting. Very limited pie crusting, and probably give some sort of a small brace in the early post-operative period, even in the meniscectomy case, if you're worried that you have opened significantly. As far as possible, in a meniscectomy situation where you're allowing the patient weight bearing immediately, you should avoid pie crusting.
Okay, and at what interval do you space your sutures?
Yes. So there is a clear biomechanical evidence in terms of the pattern, and the pattern has to be crisscross. So one above, one below, one above, one below. Typically, you can keep them about 3 to 4 millimeters apart, up to around 5 millimeters apart. So for a typical bucket handle meniscus repair, you require at least 3 to 4 stitches outside and on top, 3 to 4 outside and below. Inside out, again, you require about 4 to 5 on top and 4 to 5 below. and probably all inside, one at the back. You could keep one at the back.
Okay. And your experience about using blood clots during the repair procedure to leave it at the repair site, and what is your method to leave them at that site, if at all you use it?
Yes, so you're talking about the fibrin clot technique.
Yeah, fibrin clot.
Yes, so this comes under advanced meniscus repair techniques, because typically we will be dealing with meniscus repair in the ACL tear scenario, where there is adequate amount of bone marrow elements that are coming in to heal your repair. Isolated meniscus, that too in the subacute and the chronic phase, is where you're worried about the healing response, and that is the only indication for using a fibrin clot. It is very difficult to actually sandwich the fibrin clot inside your repair. The tips are that you need to have glass vessels and a glass stirrer to create an elastic fibrin clot. And then the meniscus repair cannula, the previous device, the previous FastFix device used to give you a blue cannula, a blue malleable plastic cannula. You use that to sandwich the fibrin clot between the two leaves of your meniscus, and use inside out repair to compress that clot within your repair.
Last question for Dr. Nagraj. I mean, if you do a chronic retracted tear, an irreducible tear,
yes,
are there any ways where you can get the bucket handle reduced?
Chronic irreducible tear, how to get the bucket handle reduced?
I mean, if there is a chronic irreducible tight contracted tear,
yeah,
are there any sort of releases where we can just get the reduction?
So on the medial side, it's not at all a problem. The pie crusting 100% of times will allow you to reduce it easily. This can be an issue on the lateral side. If you've got a lateral lock bucket handle meniscus tear, it can be an issue. And in my experience, the surgeons like me who are using the thigh holder, I think it's more easier to deal with the lateral side, because the thigh holder gives you a nice counter force compared to the TKR position, where your assistant will find it very difficult to give you that counter force. The figure of four position with a nice counter force will allow you to reduce this meniscus. If your hook probe is not allowing you to reduce it back, you can use your trocar to push it with force into the side. And sometimes you might have to burr the lateral tibial spine, because it is caught between the lateral femoral condyle and the lateral tibial spine. So you can burr that area to make sure there is smooth access into the lateral side.
Thank you.
Ajinkya, you have any more query?
Yes, sir. Sir, while repairing, suturing the outside with outside-in technique, after taking the incision and tying the knot, on which layer of the knee should we tie the knot? As in,
the knot has to come on the capsule. You have to be careful of two structures. You have to be careful of the superficial MCL, and you have to be careful of the infrapatellar branch of the saphenous nerve. So both this will be avoided if you use a hemostat. Go all the way to the capsule, put your retractors properly, and tie the knot. So you have to do an imaginary drawing of the superficial MCL from the medial epicondyle to the proximal tibia. Your outside-in incision has to be in front of it, and your inside-out incision has to be at the back of it. And you have to go all the way to the capsule and only then tie the knot.
thank you, sir.
Okay, so wonderful questions. I'm happy that.
Can I have one more question?
Yes, of course.
Now, when we have this, we take a safety incision for the inside-out technique. For the outside-in technique, do we require a safety incision, but that would come anterior?
Yes, so that would come anterior to the superficial MCL. So you don't have any dangerous structures. Rarely you can have an aberrant branch of the infrapatellar branch of the saphenous nerve, and that is what Ajinkya was just asking. What should be the layer you should tie? You should not take an incision, clear out, and immediately tie the knot, because in that case sometimes you can have entrapment of these aberrant nerves. You need to do the dissection all the way to the capsule. Make sure the retractors are in place and the knot comes on the capsule. In that case, you'll never have an issue.
So in a big bucket handle, there will be an anterior incision and a posterior middle incision.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And the entire idea of this is the cost effectiveness. The outside-in stitches are just long fiber wire sutures. You can cut them into two. So you can pass two stitches through one fiber wire suture. They are hardly about 2,000 rupees. And now inside-out repair needles are available from particular companies as cheap as 1,200 and 1,500 rupees. So you can imagine the cost of one fast fix is around 20,000. You can pass at least 10 of those stitches in the cost of one fast fix. So we have heard of situations where people have used around 8 fast fix, 10 fast fix. You can imagine the cost of the procedure and the amount we have got it down to.
Yeah.
So this is a boon for the young arthroscopist. And
so to tie,
yeah.
so to tie the fiber wires, do you use a knot pusher or you just manually just tie?
For the outside in stitches, it's not a problem because the wound is very superficial in the front. The bulk of the gastroc will make it difficult to tie the sutures in the back. So only the back you require the knot pusher, not for the outside in stitches.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So great. Let's go for the second case scenario. This is again a very important entity, and this would be missed by the young arthroscopist, the ramp lesion. I'll share my tips and tricks. Why is it important to know this? The incidence is as high as 30%. Even in our series, we have found that with appropriate visualization techniques, which I'm going to share with you, you will find that the incidence of ramp lesion is quite high. So that's the typical ramp lesion. It's a posterior meniscocapsular junction tear. Ramp is the normal area of the posterior meniscocapsular junction. And if there's a tear in that area, we call it as a ramp lesion. It has been well classified by Sandri Cotte from Lyon, France, into these 5 types, which are basically trying to say that there is involvement of the meniscotibial ligaments on the undersurface of the meniscus, either partially or completely, or it could be in the form of a double lesion. Typically, the MRI will pick it up, but not necessarily. And that is the reason why all arthroscopists should visualize this particular area in every ACL case, even if the MRI has not reported a tear in that area. The classic MRI findings are this sort of a longitudinal signal in the sagittal image, and you will see some edema in the posteromedial tibial plateau. These are the 2 indicators that there could be a ramp lesion. This is a typical arthroscopy situation wherein you are visualizing from the anterolateral portal. It's a right knee. Always go through this area between the PCL and the medial femoral condyle into the posteromedial corner. I'd like to share a few tips and tricks here. So you go between the PCL and the medial femoral condyle. In this, you might be able to pass easily, but sometimes it might be difficult. You might have to clear some fat in front of the PCL. You need to take your limb into about 20 to 30 degree flexion. You need to give a thorough valgus force. And once you enter this area, ask your assistant to give an internal rotation maneuver. So valgus, slight flexion, internal rotation, it will sublux the tibia and allow you to pass into this zone. So once you have passed into this zone, drop the knee into 90 degree flexion and you will see this sort of a ramp. Put a needle through the posteromedial, corner and use it like a probe to confirm that there is no ramp lesion. So that's the needle trick, again described by Sandri Cotte. So that's about how you visualize. What do you do when the situation is too tight? If it's a left knee, for example, I'm cleared the tissue in front of the PCL, but I'm unable to pass. I'm unable to pass in spite of all my trips. So what I do is shift the scope into the medial portal. So now this is the left knee. I'm unable to pass through my typical anterolateral portal. I've shifted the scope into the anteromedial portal now. I then come with a switching stick from the anterolateral portal, pass it through that interval between the PCL and the medial femoral condyle, drop the knee into 90 degree flexion and railroad the arthroscopy sheath into this switching stick. And you have entered the posteromedial capsule. So this is what you would do when it's a tight knee for visualization in that area. Now, this is the importance of why you should visualize that posteromedial area in every case. So this is a normal looking meniscus, and a young arthroscopist would leave it at that. But if you go inside into that posteromedial corner, you will realize that you would have missed this sort of a ramp lesion. And these are devastating in terms of the poor outcomes if you miss these. You can see this is a large ramp lesion. Again, pie crusting. I always do the pie crusting even in case of a ramp lesion. We have gone through this. And the advantage is, even a tight meniscus, you can appreciate the extent of the tear. You can appreciate the entire posteromedial tibial plateau is exposed. So you need to do repair not only on the superior surface, but also on the under surface. That's the take-home message. When you do a pie crusting, you can visualize thoroughly and understand the importance of repairing both the upper surface and the under surface. So I'll share my technique My technique involves creation of 2 posteromedial portals. It's easily possible to do so. If you go too high, you risk damaging the medial head of gastroc, and if you go too low, you risk damaging the infrapatellar branch of the saphenous nerve. That's if you go too low, and that's if you go too high. So you need to be in that exact triangle. What are the tips and tricks to create that? This is the triangle I'm talking about. You got the adductor fold on top, medial femoral condyle in front, gastroc fold posteriorly, and the semimembranosus fold inferiorly. That's the triangle. So this is the trick. Turn off the light in the OR. You will see the trans illumination and get your needle exactly in the center of it. So when you're in the center, you're absolutely safe. And the triangle is big enough for you to create 2 such incisions. And this is the example of a right knee. I've entered the posteromedial corner. I'm in that triangle, and the first needle comes above the capsular fold. I need to stress on this point that the first needle is above the capsular fold, and this is the second needle, which is at the level of the joint line. Keep the needles there. Don't take out the needles. Use the 11 number blade, and the needle helps you in the direction. The upper portal is where I would create, if possible, a horizontal incision, because when the horizontal incision closes, the capsular fold automatically closes that portal. So there is no fluid seepage. So I prefer a horizontal incision parallel to the capsular fold on the superior side. The spinal needle is maintained to help you with the direction. Dilate that portal, come with a 5.5 mm cannula on the superior side. You could use a clear cannula like this. Then coming with the biological preparation, the diamond rasp on both the sides, the capsular side and the meniscal side. You then come with a shaver and use it like a rasp in the reverse mode. Keep the suction off so you don't damage any tissue. So this is the ramp lasso. This is not a cost-effective technique. But the advantage of this is there is a 25-degree bend to it, which is ideal for a ramp repair, and therefore it's called a ramp lasso. The second advantage is that it is loaded with a number 0 fiber wire stick. So you pass on the capsular side, then you pass on the meniscal side, and once you shuttle a suture, the fiber wire immediately comes in. Now this is a situation where the patient can afford, you can use this ramp lasso. The suture retriever retrieves both the sutures and above, and then you tie a sliding knot. If the meniscal tissue quality is poor, you should tie a non-sliding knot, and you can get a nice repair there. What do you do if it's a cost constraint scenario? Use your simple suture shuttle like a Spectrum-like device, which is available from some Indian companies also. They are at 45-degree bend. They are loaded with a simple ethylon, number 1 ethylon. The same principle, pass the bite through the capsule, then pass the bite to the meniscus. When you're passing through the meniscus, you might find it difficult. So use a hook probe from the anteromedial portal like a counterforce, which will help you to take a nice deep bite. So the ethylon comes in first, shuttle the fiber wire for the ethylon, and you can tie 2 to 3 such stitches. This is very similar to a bank cut repair in the shoulder, because the fallen capsule you are now repairing back to the level of the meniscus. So having done that, you can use a fast fix like device if the patient is affordable, or you could do the same trick of inside out repair which we just saw. So I will shift the scope to the medial portal, get my hook probe from the lateral portal, take my safety incision and do inside out stitches in this area. If the patient is affordable, then obviously you would use fast fix like devices, not only on the superior surface, but also on the inferior surface. That's important to understand, that you have to put stitches on the inferior surface because the meniscotibial ligaments are damaged here. So that's the reverse curved fast fix, which is used for the under surface, meniscal side stitch, capsular side stitch. And you will see that when you pull on this stitch, the meniscal flaunce is well restored. So you don't need fast fix for these stitches. You can do it with simple lasso-like stitches on top and inside out stitches for the other surface. So we've gone through this already. So you can do the inside out stitches. We have gone through this, and that really completes your ramp lesion repair. So that's the final. So whatever techniques you do, you need to have this sort of a nice stable ramp repair. So that completes my ramp technique. So any questions on this? We have another 20 minutes for the entire presentation as per Dr. Bijlani's instructions. So any quick questions?
Yes. I would like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Sir, is there any other way through which we can visualize the posterior area or the posterior medial area apart from going from the PCL and medial femoral condyle? Can we go in between ACL, PCL and see and do the repair?
Yes. So you can go through what is called as a transseptal track. The transseptal track can be created in two ways. So one, you can go between the ACL and the PCL, and you would dissect the septum behind the PCL. Once you have dissected the septum behind the PCL, you get a small window which helps you enter into the posteromedial corner. Create your posteromedial portal. Get your shaver from the posteromedial portal. Keep the blades away from the posterior capsule. It should be facing you. Start withdrawing your scope and start shaving the midline septum. Now, there have been reports that a transseptal view gives you kind of a cinema scope view because you get the view of the entire area and there is no need for a 70-degree scope. But I have not found it to be necessary at all. Although we do it routinely for other techniques like PCL avulsion fracture fixations, but I have not found it necessary for the ramp lesion repair, but you could do it. Another way, and the other people have done it, is clearing out the entire midline septum at the back. So you create your posteromedial portal, like how we discussed. You then create your posterolateral portal. So you shift your scope to the anteromedial side, go between the ACL and the lateral femoral condyle. So ACL is absent, so it's very easy to go into the lateral femoral condyle. Create a posterolateral portal anterior to the fibula head. You can keep your scope in the posteromedial portal, get your shaver from the posterolateral portal and clear the entire midline septum. So the entire knee is exposed at the back. But again, it's not necessary for these sort of repairs.
So, Dr. Nagaraj, do you ever have to do a reverse chondroplasty, reverse notchplasty to get into the posterior compartment?
By reverse notchplasty, if you mean that you want to clear some amount of the medial tibial spine, yes. Sometimes
No. The bone, the femoral condyle under the PCL, where we remove some of the synovium, a little bit of with the burr.
Yes, the problem is not in this case. It's not with the prominence of the lateral femoral condyle ever. We are at the level of the joint line. So the problem comes with the prominence of the medial tibial spine. In some patients, you can find
when the Gilchrist maneuver becomes very difficult, that time we require to create more space. We may have to do some kind of a reverse notchplasty.
Yes. So what I do is what I showed in the video. I will shift my scope to the anteromedial portal. I will come with my shaver from the anterolateral portal.
Yeah, urine loading, that is what you explained. Yeah.
What you need to understand is sometimes if your anterolateral portal is at a higher level, then you will abut onto the medial femoral condyle or to the tibial spine, create another portal parallel to the joint line. And then you will be able to easily pass a switching stick through that area. And even if it is more difficult, you can clear some fat, you can burr out some medial tibial spine.
Is missing a ramp lesion one of the causes of failure of ACLs?
100%. It has been proven biomechanically that effectively what happens is that the posteromedial meniscotibial ligaments are completely torn in this case. So there is a excessive laxity because of additional corner injury. So if you missed the corner injury and done only the ACL graft will be constantly subjected to that anterior translatory force, and it will give way in some time or will lead to laxity of the graft, and the patient will never be capable of doing sporting outcomes. He will not have frank instability, but they will not be able to do their active athletic activities.
Yeah. So in every case of ACL also, we should go into the posteromedial compartment and inspect.
Absolutely. That is the take-home message.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sir, what is the degree of lasso device you have used? Was it a 45 degree? Was it a 70?
It's a 45 degree. 45 degree lasso. So the right knee, you will use the left curve.
Yes. And sir, can we use the devices which we use in Bankart repair, or do we find sometimes I have found that the devices are too big and pierce the menisci, and they might as well cause the tear. So Is there any trick for that?
So if you use the commercial lasso devices, they are bulky. But if you use the spectrum-like device and the low-profile spectrum-like device, which some Indian companies have also copied, they are much more delicate on the menisci. The typical lasso which you have got for the Bankart repair, they are slightly bulky. But you can, in a situation where there is no option, you can use it, because the advantage of that is you can reuse those lassos. You can re-sterilize and reuse those lassos. Okay, so Dr. Bijlani.
I had a webinar with the US surgeon but couldn't do it.
Okay, so we have another 10 minutes. So shall we go ahead with the radial repair or the root repair?
Yes.
Shall we go with the radial repair or the root repair?
We go for the root repair. I mean, that is
So
more
what
common.
happened, I'll just explain.
Okay.
4 and 4:30 we just could not connect to. I had another webinar to connect to, but couldn't.
So I think Dr. Bijlani has to mute on this presentation, no?
Who's
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, okay. So let's quickly go through the root repair, because I think that's more relevant. This is the two images that I always try to remind myself when I try to do a root repair. On the left hand side, you see the image of the arthroscopy Gilkish view, which Dr. Prasad just spoke about, which is basically showing the typical normal meniscus root merging with the PCL in that area. It's like a beak-like structure which merges with the PCL. And then at the posterior medial tibial plateau site, you have the shiny white fibers. So with this understanding, we need to know that a root tear is not necessarily a root avulsion, meaning the root at the junction with the PCL, not necessarily when it avulses called as a root tear. Any tear that occurs from this junction of the root with the PCL to about a centimeter medial is included in the root tears, and that is what is actually more common. Radial tears near the root are actually more common, and all of them come under the category of medial meniscus posterior horn root tear. So these are the two anatomical structures. It's important to repair these because Christopher Hanna in the early 2000 has confirmed that if there is a root tear and if you leave it and if you do a meniscectomy, then it is as good as doing a total meniscectomy in terms of the biomechanical damage. There is, it is never enough to stress that you have to always look at the alignment. Make sure the patient doesn't have a varus malalignment. Make sure not just by clinical examination but also by a scanogram that the mechanical axis is going through the center of the knee and not through the inner part of the knee. And we are not discussing the varus knees today. We are discussing the normal knees which have got a root tear. These are the MRI classic findings. On the coronal image, you will see the meniscus extrusion and the subchondral edema. On the axial image, you will see the loss of continuity between the root and the PCL. And on the sagittal image, you will see the ghost meniscus sign, which is the absence of the normal meniscus signal just medial to the PCL image. And on the coronal image, again, you will see the loss of that beak, which is there between the medial meniscus root and the PCL. So these are the classic MRI findings. That is the ghost meniscus sign. That's the loss of continuity. That's the meniscus extrusion. And that's the line that you draw from the prominent medial femoral condyle to know the degree of extrusion. And that's the subchondral edema, also called as the spontaneous, wrongly rather, called as a spontaneous osteonecrosis, but it's a subchondral edema, which is very classic for a medial meniscus root tear. These have been described by Robert Laprade. Meniscus extrusion is significant when it is more than 3 to 4 millimeters. My first tip is you create your medial portal parallel to the joint line. Your spinal needle has to come parallel to the joint line and it is to be directed towards the posterior horn medial meniscus root. It's critical you do this because all your instruments are then going to come perfectly parallel and not scuff the cartilage. The next thing is you're going to be putting bulky instruments into the knee. So use your 11 number blade, create a large capsulotomy, use a hemostat, widen that area well. This is the trick that I was talking about. You can burr some amount of the area around the medial tibial spine because this is going to be the area where your bulky instruments are going to pass. So dilatation of the medial portal, passage of the shaver and clearance of the soft tissue around the medial tibial spine.
Yeah.
This is that wide bore needle I was talking, which comes with the TUR set. The same tricks of pike rusting you will see in this image. The amount of opening that you can achieve very easily, and a radial tear near the root, which is there in this case, you'll be able to palpate. So you got adequate space, and you can pass your bulky instruments easily. So that's the first trick. Now, if you do not have the knee scorpion, you can use the same spectrum and pass it from above the meniscus through the undersurface of the meniscus. And this can be loaded with either a looped, commercially available HD wire loop, or you can load it with the simple Ethilon if that is also not cost effective. So another image of the spectrum coming in. Pass the stitch from above below. Shuttle relay your passing suture. Get your suture manipulator and retrieve that suture from the transpatellar tendon portal. So I will tell you how to create the transpatellar tendon portal. That's my next trick. Now, once you have passed the Ethilon, you need to now exchange the Ethilon for a fiber wire. So I tie a dilator knot, which will create a track for my fiber wire. So simple knot first, and then you create another knot, which is taking your fiber wire. So and you can just pull your Ethilon. So once again, we'll go through the images. So you tie a dilator knot, and then you take a loop of Ethilon, which will take the fiber wire. So that's the dilator knot. Having this, you'll do another loop. You will feed the fiber wire on that loop, and now when you pull, the dilator knot will create a track for that loop, and you've got a loop of fiber wire available for you to tie your loop stitch. So this is a simple loop stitch. This is what I used to do previously. You get a nice simple loop stitch. You can also create a double loop stitch. So that's the simple loop stitch. The Ethilon has been exchanged for the fiber wire and number 0 fiber wire, and you get a nice loop inside. You can create a double loop stitch this way. So the fiber wire which has come can be passed in a double loop manner, which will give you more grip. So that was the spectrum being used. If you're using the new knee scorpion, you can directly load the fiber wire number O on the knee scorpion, create a double loop stitch, and you have got the stitch available. Or you could exchange the fiber wire for a tape, and this is what I am doing routinely now. So as you can see here, when I'm worried about the tissue quality, I have used a number 0 fiber wire in a loop fashion on the poor quality medial tissue. That's another tip. And I've shuttled the fiber wire for a tape on the area where the meniscus quality is good. So if the quality is good, 2 tapes. If the quality is precarious, then you can use 1 fiber wire and 1 tape. And if the quality is really poor, you can use another stitch of fiber wire in the medial area here. So it works like a ripstop configuration. So the suture tapes are now taken into the transpatellar tendon portal. So that's the shuttling of the fiber wire for the tapes. This is a tissue which is of good quality. So I've passed 2 tapes, and then to the transpatellar tendon portal, I retrieve and station those tapes in the transpatellar tendon portal. So the medial portal is now free for the passage of the jig. So that's the creation of the transpatellar tendon portal. You go through the center of the tendon, and now you can retrieve the suture and station there. So that's another trick for root repair. You can keep curved shaver blades with you. It can be very easily reused. So curved shaver blades help you in preparation of that area, and your curved curettes also can help you in creating a nice raw bleeding surface. You can use a simple ACL jig with nice pike rusting, but you do have low profile jigs available for this now, and you can come exactly at the root attachment which we just discussed for creation of the tunnel. So that's the guide wire which is passed. Over the guide wire, you ream usually with about a 5 to 5.5 mm tunnel. Do not remove the 5.5 or 5 mm reamer. Keep it in place. On the right hand side lower, you can see my assistant feeding a loop of Ethilon, simple Ethilon, into that reamer, and that loop I will retrieve through my medial portal. So that's the loop, simple Ethilon loop. And now you create what is called as a virtual cannula. So this is the creation of the virtual cannula. All the sutures have been retrieved into the medial portal. Now in one pass, in order to avoid any soft tissue bridge, all the tape and the ethylon has to be retrieved through the medial portal. So when you retrieve it in one pass, you create a virtual cannula. You can do it 2 to 3 times to make sure that there is no soft tissue bridge. Of course, if you have a passport cannula, this becomes very easy and there will be no suture, but again, that's cost unfriendly. So you create a virtual cannula by passing multiple times through the medial portal and retrieving all the sutures together. Then load the tapes onto the ethylon and that completes your repair. So this is for the extruded meniscus. We'll keep it if at all later. Now another trick is to identify the tapes separately. So one of the tapes you can put a marking pen and color them. So you identify the tapes. Tie the tapes on the more medial side first, the one that has gone through good quality tissue first. That you can mark it with your marking pen and tie it first, so that there is less tension. Otherwise, there will be a cut through if you tie the first one, and then the one which is through the poor quality tissue, and you can have a nice strong root repair like this. So that's a nice strong root repair. Quickly, what we now do for the meniscus extrusion, I'll just show. So that's the centralization stitch. I've come through a midline portal, and you come with your bank cut liberator and liberate the area between the meniscus and the posteromedial tibia. Root repair tapes have been passed, tunnel has been created, those tapes have been taken into the tunnel, and then you do the step. So you liberate it so that the meniscus can be pulled into the joint. We went through this already. You then put a anchor, an all suture anchor into the mid portion. You then use a lasso, curved lasso like device, and shuttle these anchor sutures through the meniscocapsular junction in a mattress fashion, and then you tie that. When you're tying this, your assistant is pulling on the root repair stitches so that there is low tension on the repair, because there will be a lot of tension in this extruded meniscus if you do only a root repair. So that's the root repair stitches. 3 I have passed in this case, as you can see here, and that's the centralization stitch. So that's the new addition in root repairs that we are doing. So that completes my root repair talk.
Yeah, Dr. Nagraj.
Yes.
When you have to do an HTO simultaneously,
Yeah.
with the root repair,
Yeah.
so how do you make the tunnel, which has to be so that it does not come in the way of the HTO?
Yes. So I'll just show you. I'll just show you the continuation actually of a different presentation. So what I do is I first take the arthroscopy evaluation. I pass the stitches through the meniscus, but I don't create the tunnel. So the tapes have been passed through the meniscal tissue. Then you take your HTO osteotomy incision, and if you have a minute, I'll show you the video itself. Bijlani sahab, we are high on time, or we have
Yes,
another?
you can go ahead. You can show the 10 minutes, right?
Yes, another 10 minutes. So I think Dr. Prasad has brought out a good point.
See, as you can see, how many talks he has taken up till now.
Acha, everybody is getting to see na? Arey baap re. Apna data.
No, we can only see the titles. We cannot see anything inside that.
Acha, okay.
What I will do is that you search for the talk. I'll just stop the screen share in the meantime.
हाँ जी, actually मिल गया sir. We are there.
Okay, ठीक है.
So can you see this slide.
Yes.
So as you can see, the tapes have been passed through the tunnel. This is what I used to do first. I used to create a vertical tunnel and try to be in the proximal portion. But what I now do is I don't pass the tapes through the tunnel. I don't create the tunnel first. I take the incision for the MCL. I do the superficial MCL release. So I know the proximal medial tibial anatomy now. I find the level of the osteotomy, and once I know the level of the osteotomy, I then place the jig and make sure that the tunnel comes more proximal to my osteotomy and more anterior to my most anterior screw. So it is a oblique tunnel, slightly higher, more towards the midline. So once again, summarizing it, I do the arthroscopy, I do the passage of the tapes through the root. I then open the proximal tibia. I do the MCL release and then place my jig under vision into the area there where I know my screws are not going to be conflicting with the tunnel.
So you finish the root repair before the
I finished
HTO.
the passage of these tapes through the.
No. Before you perform the HTO, your root repair is done, or the tunnel is done.
The tunnel is not done. Again, I'll repeat. So I do the arthroscopy. I pass the stitches through the root. Then I come for the incision of the HTO. I release the superficial MCL. Then I go back to my scopy. I place the jig now. I create the tunnel under vision in the most anterior portion of the proximal tibia above the level of the osteotomy. And then I pass the tapes through the tunnel. I keep a switching stick in that tunnel so that when I'm putting the anterior screw, even if I hit, I will hit on the rod, not necessarily on the tapes.
Right. Thank you.
Yes. Sir, can we can we do the root repair using only anchor?
Yeah, so let's finish off my talk. I had kept that as a reserve in case the questions come up. So yes, you can do it. There are a couple of positives and negatives of doing it with an anchor. So I'll just go through 3 slides. So this is the image of an anchor based repair. So what you require is a very high posteromedial portal, which is coming. This is the left knee, extremely high posteromedial portal. There are a couple of things in your control to get this trajectory. Number one, you require your assistant to go into extreme valgus. You need to come from an extreme angle, that is a high posteromedial angle, and your assistant should be able to maintain that as the drilling and the anchor passage is going on, which is sometimes difficult. But this is something which is in your control. What is not in your control is the convexity of the medial femoral condyle. Sometimes whatever you try to do, you will not get this trajectory without damaging the medial femoral condyle. So if you are able to do that, this will be it. You will pass your knotless anchor. That is the angle. Then you will retrieve the sutures through the medial portal and use a antegrade device to pass the stitches through the meniscus. And then it is just tying of the knot. And you have a knotless repair. There is no need for a tunnel. So this would be ideal for a situation where you feel that in the root repair there is significant amount of tunnel confluence. But it is easier said than done. So that's the final repair image of a anchor based repair.
So is there any difference in the biomechanical strength between the tunnel technique and this anchor technique?
In terms of the biomechanical strength, frankly, no. I think the biomechanical strength of the anchor based repair has also been pointed out to be quite good. And it's all about the adequate amount of preparation that you create. The anchor based repair doesn't mean that you put an anchor and just put a stitch. There has to be adequate amount of healing response in that area. So you need to create a nice raw healing surface in that area. We need to understand, good that you brought this point out, we need to understand that the meniscus doesn't heal in the tunnel. The meniscus heals on the surface. So it's the raw area that you create, whether it's an anchor or whether it's a tunnel, it has to heal on the surface, which has to be well prepared. So I think we have covered quite a few points. Any other questions, or we give closing remarks? Dr. Bijlani is there?
Yes.
Radial tear is something that was remaining, but I think we are exceeding time, so we can always do it later sometime.
Okay. Now, how much? If it is going to take 5-10 minutes, just finish it off so that it should be a comprehensive meniscal tear, a repair.
Great. So,
The repair or radial tear or the excision?
repair.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll finish it in 10 minutes. We'll
Right.
keep the questions limited because I think it's very unique, some of the tips that I'm going to share. This is the typical radial tear of the lateral meniscus near the root, which all arthroscopists will encounter. And this is important to be repaired. Just like the radial tear of the medial meniscus, this has to be repaired because this is resulting in significant pivot shift phenomenon, because this tear extends into the capsule and weakens the posterolateral area. Now, it's important to understand that when you're encountering the repair near the root, you need to be away from the vasculature. You need to come from a diagonally opposite portal and you need to divert your devices away from the midline. So this is a medial meniscus root repair where I'm diverting it away from the midline and come from the diagonally opposite portal as far as possible. Why is this so? Because cadaveric studies have shown that your FastFix device in 90-degree flexion can be as close as 2 centimeters to the nerve and as close as 1.5 centimeter to your popliteal artery. So it's important, number one, to come from the diagonally opposite portal, not like how you're seeing in this video. This is the wrong technique. Coming from the same side, come from the opposite side and ask your assistant to go into 90-degree flexion, because then the vessels go as far as 1.5 centimeter away, and be very careful near the root. So that's the summary. Come from the diagonally opposite portal, because when you come from the same side, you are likely to risk injuring these important structures. So if it's a FastFix device, I create a transpatellar tendon portal. The visualization in this case, which is the right knee, is from the anteromedial side. The rasp, etc., is coming from the anterolateral side, but the device will come from the FastFix-like device will come from the transpatellar tendon portal, diverting away from the midline, keeping the length as short as 14 millimeters. So I am sure that I'm not going to be encroaching upon the vessels. This is sometimes possible, sometimes not possible. If it's possible, it's a quick repair technique and you get a stable repair. What if it is not possible? For these sort of advanced techniques, you do require to have the knee scorpion with you. This is another radial tear near the root where the meniscal tissue quality is anyways poor. It will not take a FastFix. Again, you do the rasping irrespective of how much time you have. These steps are important. Pass a number 0 fiber wire through the root side of the tissue. Again, transpatellar tendon portal will retrieve the upper suture. The under suture is loaded, that's the upper suture being retrieved. The under suture is loaded onto the scorpion and passed through the remaining portion of the tissue. Now both ends are retrieved through the transpatellar tendon portal. Like you see, I put a cannula now into the lateral portal, retrieve both the sutures so that there is no soft tissue bridge. And then I tie a simple non-sliding knot. And this is a wonderful technique because this area is very vascular and it is very, very likely to heal and have excellent outcomes. So this is what you do in a typical radial tear near the root. These are my tips and tricks. This was a patient who had a mild twisting injury, normal scanogram, and he had a radial tear which was going through and through the mid body of the medial meniscus. It is almost as if you're cutting the meniscus. These are the other images. It's very difficult to understand what is the ideal treatment option because the inside out repair, which has been described for these tears, is not biomechanically strong, because you will see that many a times the tissue quality is extremely poor. You can see the cartilage is pristine in this gentleman. It is not an arthritic knee. The tear is going all the way to the capsule of the medial meniscus. So if you do a meniscectomy in this situation, it will end up with as good as a near total meniscectomy. And you can see that's the tear extending into the capsule. So doing only inside out repair, it's counterintuitive. How will these frayed edges heal? And that is where the Laprade 2-tunnel technique has worked as a savior. And I'll just quickly go through that technique. This is the technical note. All of you can access it. This is the typical anteromedial curved incision, and you require a safety incision for the inside out repair. Pie crusting, we have gone through this extensively today. Thorough preparation, we have gone through this again. Thorough preparation with the small joint shaver blade, rasp and the capsule. Then you have to drill 2 tunnels, one adjoining the posterior flap and one adjoining the anterior flap. These are the 2 tunnels from the Laprade article. There are dedicated jigs for this. This is the kind of position you will take. You also require the PCL depth stopper and you require the PCL guide wire, because you cannot afford in 90-degree flexion to drill blindly because the wire will damage your femoral condyle. So PCL depth stopper and the PCL guide wire, along with an offset jig, which you see on the right-hand side, will make sure that you are able to create two tunnels 7 millimeters apart. So that's the offset guide. After passing the first wire, you can pass the second wire exactly 7 millimeter away from the first wire. That's the kind of wires you will see. This is a quick video of the same. So jig has been passed adjoining the posterior flap. Low profile jig, you can see, is important because otherwise you will damage the cartilage. That's the guide wire through the posterior portion. Another wire that comes through the anterior portion. So there is no scope of drilling a bigger tunnel here. The guide wires itself should work like tunnels. So 2.4 guide wires, one posteriorly, one anteriorly. Now I'll share a very important trick. It's very difficult if you miss the track of these guide wires. So what you now need to do is ask your assistant to, when he withdraws it, to turn it in circumferential fashion. I will show that in the next video. You then use anti-grade devices to pass fiber wire stitches of different color coding. You can use an ultra braid and a co-braid, or a fiber wire and an ultra braid. So that's a white suture through the posterior flap and a different colored suture through the anterior flap. Again, transpatellar tendon portal will station these sutures. You come with your scorpion-like device and pass a different color coded suture through the anterior flap. So guide wires have been passed, sutures are being passed through good quality flap tissue and retrieved through the, I've created an accessory medial portal here, additional medial portal, which has kept the other suture. So there is no suture entanglement. This is the trick I was telling you. Just observe, my assistant is turning the drill in a circumferential fashion. I am waiting with a straight lasso. We are keeping a suction available to make sure I immediately catch that tunnel. So he's turning it multiple times to widen the tunnel and immediately pass the lasso into that tunnel, which will then put a loop, HD wire loop, inside the joint and help me shuttle the sutures. So that's me shuttling the sutures into those tunnels. So the posterior suture goes through the anterior tunnel and the anterior suture goes through the posterior tunnel. And you will see how nicely you can get a nice biomechanically strong repair, almost similar principles like a root repair. And you can be confident that this can heal. So you tie the sutures over an endo button and then you do your inside out stitches, which we have been discussing since last few cases. So that's the inside out repair. You pass 2 inside out stitches on top and 2 on the under surface. So you've done a root repair type of tunnel technique and you pass multiple stitches. So that we have discussed how to go about it. That's the final construct of a radial tear through the mid body. I was fortunate to follow this patient at 9 months. We got his repeat MRI. You can see on the left hand side the pre-operative radial tear. On the right hand side you can see the signals are almost gone. The tunnel signals is there. What's important to note that his articular cartilage is well preserved and there is no extrusion. And I think this is an extremely gratifying procedure. And the patient, this is a WhatsApp image, not a very thorough follow-up, but absolutely comfortable patient. And he was in excruciating pain prior to the surgery. So these techniques do help because they are biomechanically strong. You have created tunnels, so healing elements are coming exactly where the repair is there, and your biomechanically strong repair construct is maintaining that repair. That completes all the cases that I wanted to show today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nagraj Shetty, for a comprehensive cover of the meniscus repair. Dr. Prasad, Dr. Ajinkya, do you have any more queries?
No, that was pretty good.
Okay, so it was a learning experience for all of us, and we thank everyone for giving us a special time. And from Ortho TV, we thank GSK, the makers of Iodex Ultra Gel, for bringing us this webinar. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Dr. Jani, Ajinkya. Thank you, Dr. Prasad. Take care. Stay safe.